I'm Tiffany. Welcome to Towering TBR. So I've noticed my subscriber count has gone up. We've got some new faces around. So I thought that this tag, talking about my reading taste, might be a really good introductory way to get to know me and my bookish taste. I saw Victoria over at What Victoria Read do this tag, and I thought that this would be perfect. So I am going to answer some bookish questions, talk about books I like and dislike, and really let you get to know me. So question 1, describe your reading taste in one sentence. So I would say my reading taste is a wide variety, but preferably escapist. Question 2 says, describe your reading taste with categories, genre, age, length. So I read middle grade, I read adult, I read science fiction, fantasy, nonfiction, classics, literary fiction, comics. It would be shorter for me to tell you what I don't prefer, which is horror, YA, and not super big on romance. Question 3 says, show us a few books that represent your reading taste. And because my reading taste is so wide, I have lots of books to show you. So the first is Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This is a philosophical science fiction that has some time travel elements. Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade fantasy. It is super fun and very whimsical. Nimona is a fantastical graphic novel. It is probably my favorite graphic novel that I've ever read. It is so good. And the movie on Netflix is pretty good too. I'd recommend it. All the Young Men by Ruth Coker Burks. This is a nonfiction, sort of a memoir talking about helping men who were dying of AIDS in the 1980s and early 90s. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is my favorite science fiction novel. It is incredibly character-driven, slow, found family, and lots of great representation. And lastly, I wanted to add my favorite book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is a classic coming-of-age story about Francie growing up poor in Brooklyn in the early 1900s. Question 4 asks, what is a book you didn't enjoy, but it seemed like it would be your taste? So, because my favorite is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, so many people have told me to read I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. No relation, I don't think. And while I gave it 3 stars, I didn't absolutely hate it. It didn't work for me. I was greatly disappointed by this book. And I thought I was going to love it. Question 5 is, what is a book you enjoyed that didn't seem like it would be your taste? So I have 2 for that. The first is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I said earlier that I don't really read romance, but I read this romance because it had some disability representation. The main character, Chloe, has fibromyalgia, and I really enjoyed it, had a good time. I felt like some of the miscommunication tropes were a little bit more believable, which is probably the biggest reason I have issues with romance. I don't like contrived situations. The other book that I love that doesn't really seem like it would be for me is The Blood of Flowers. This is set in the Middle East in the 1500s. We follow this girl as tragedy after tragedy happens. She wants to be a rug weaver, but that is a profession that mostly men do. And yeah, this just had so much history that I didn't really know anything about, which would normally put me off of a book. I don't tend to like historical fiction if it's really far in the past. But absolutely love this, and I'm hoping to reread this again soon. Number 6 says, show us some books on your TBR that you think will be exactly to your reading taste. So the first is Spin by Robert Charles Wilson. This is a science fiction set in space. That just sounds awesome, and there are so many great reviews. I can't wait to get to this one. A Fine Balance by Rohit Mistry. This is an epic story in India, and it's an incredibly sprawling story, I think, between these 4 friends. That sounds right up my alley, hoping to get to this one this year as well. Disability Pride by Ben Matlin. This is essays about disability, and I love learning more about disability and different activists and different movements that happen. Like, I just think this will be, again, this is my reading taste. I really think I'm going to enjoy this one. And the last one that I have on my TBR is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I read East of Eden earlier this year and absolutely loved it. Fell in love with John Steinbeck's writing. It is so easy to get into, and I think that this is going to be an amazing story as well. Number 7 says, name a booktuber who has similar reading tastes to you. I'm going to name 2. The first is Sandra at One for the Books. She and I have a lot of reading tastes that overlap, especially with science fiction and fantasy. And the other is Audrey over at Audrey Approved. She and I have really similar taste with fiction and nonfiction. So sometimes when I find out that she's read something and really enjoyed it, I'm like, oh, I'll probably enjoy it too. So that's kind of fun. Have you always had this reading taste, or has it changed over time? And I will say my reading taste has definitely changed over time. In the very beginning, when I was an adult, I was reading mostly women's contemporary fiction like Sophie Kinsella. And then I really got into literary fiction, and after that I got really into science fiction and fantasy and added nonfiction and classics, and yeah, it's just constantly evolving. The last says to tag some people, so I will tag some people in the description below. If you'd like to do this tag and I don't tag you, feel free to do it. Consider yourselves tagged. I'm really interested to hear what some of your answers would be. And yeah, let's have a chat down in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me.